So hello, this is BSJ, and this video is just going to be a review of one of the highest skill games I feel like I've watched in a while from an individual. This is Maybe from LGD, and we're going to be just talking about each individual movement he makes. So right away, let's go ahead and just mute the game real quick, because there could be some annoying sounds. Right away, he got a kill mid, and it's 7 minutes into the game. Something really important you should do on any hero you play is recognizing the threat that you offer against any hero on the opponent team, and what those opponent heroes want to do. So right away, he shrines up. A lot of regular pub players would just walk back mid here. And even though this is a team game, it's really important to recognize that Leshrac at level 6 threatens Necro, and Necro's the space maker for this Drow lineup. They have an Arc Warden and Drow, two heroes that require a lot of space to be made on the map. So he threatens the most aggressive hero on the opponent team, and is the only hero that threatens him until Nyx 6 and Bane 6. So unless he goes now, they have to wait until Nyx 6, and he still has to be there to follow it up, or they're never killing this Necro. So he knows that he is the only person that threatens Necro, and he goes immediately bottom before Necro's powerful enough with the Catapult. Like, Necro is pressuring with Catapult, and Necro, who's level 6 to his Nyx Assassin's level 4, suddenly gets killed. I'm going to fast forward. Gives his Nyx the lane. This is important. After you get a kill, what do you do with it? This is a question I propose to people in every coaching session. What do you do with this kill? Well, he got a kill. Is he going to take the lane? No, he needs to give his Nyx level time to get levels. So he sits and jungles near bottom. Why is he jungling near bottom? Because that's where Necro is, and he knows he's the only hero that threatens Necro, so he stays here. And he's ready to punish him again. Lingers. Necro has to play scared because he doesn't know where Leshrac is, and he even dies again because Leshrac stayed bottom. So you may say, BSJ, that seems like such a simple decision. He chose to not stay in lane, but he didn't go back mid immediately. He didn't go anywhere else. He chose to jungle bottom. And I've talked about briefly in coaching sessions that jungling here implies that you want to stay near here, but it's not your job to farm the lane. Because if he just pushes this tower, his Nyx is level 5, level 4 at the time, isn't very happy about that. So instead he jungles near the lane he wants to be, knowing that's where he's supposed to be, but he doesn't take the lane farm, and then proceeds to kill the hero that only he threatens on the other team again. Now that he's successfully caught his Nyx back up, he's allowed to go back mid. This play ends up not working, because I think Arc Warden honestly played it really well. We're going to fast forward. Works with his Bane mid. His Bane makes his play, he understands that he makes his Bane powerful. This may seem so simple, he just returned to his lane, BSJ. I look at this game and I say, who do I enable on my team to do what they can't do without me? And I look at Bane as a hero that actually has no threat on any of these heroes until he's level 6, unless he has Leshrac stun to follow him up. Notice how it's not only a high skill play on Leshrac's part, but also a high skill play on Bane's part to put himself in the same lane as the core that enables him to actually be impactful in the game. This is a level 4 Bane that just set up a kill on a mid Arc Warden. This is understanding that if you're a Bane and you're playing around your PL or your Nyx, you're just being useless. But by being a level 4 Bane with a follow-up stun on a hero that offers all the damage to kill him, that makes you impactful. Not only is that an understanding thing from Bane as a support to make that happen, but that's also a drafting thing. He drafted heroes that enable his Bane because he had first rounded the Bane. Fast forwarding. You may say, BSJ, why doesn't he have a point in Diabolic Edict? This is something I was thinking to myself during the game when I watched it. And it's simple. Diabolic Edict helps him push towers. But he's never going to be able to push this tower if Arc Warden's alive. And the only way he's going to kill Arc Warden is if he maxes out all of his other skills in order to kill Arc Warden when he has set up from Bane. Because he knows that the damage from his teammates is incredibly limited. So he has to do all the damage. And so I would argue if he had put a point in Diabolic Edict, Arc Warden might have lived, so he wouldn't even be pushing this tower anyways. So even though he wants to push towers with Diabolic Edict, he has to kill these heroes, Necro, Arc Warden, anyways. So you may say he would have damage to kill this tower if he leveled Diabolic Edict. I would argue he wouldn't even be hitting this tower if he had Diabolic Edict leveled. Notice how he pushes in the lane, and minute he's done with the lane, he asks himself what's important on the map. He debates jungling. He knows the runes are coming up. He sees a camp that's not satyrs, honestly. I think that's pretty much what decides his decision here. It's not the satyrs. Those die the easiest, the fastest, and how much gold they're worth. And he immediately runs to an important objective to join his team on the side of the map where the opponent's likely to be strong. He doesn't need to help his PL. His PL's not the one that wants to get played around. His Nyx is. So he plays around the Nyx. Like, you say, why did he go bottom instead of top? Don't play around your PL. He's useless. He wants to farm right now. Play around the guy that helps you kill people. So he goes bottom and picks up those bounties. Helps set up for 4 bounties for his team. Continues to play around his playmaker. This is not only making plays bottom, even if he doesn't kill people. He's applying a ton of threat, making Drow have to play all the way back here, making it so Nyx has free farm in the bottom lane, and this also draws attention away from his from his PL in the top lane, who is a hero that doesn't want to have attention on him. If you're a playmaking hero like Leshrac and you go to your carry's lane that doesn't actually want to have plays made around, the opponent will counterplay you, even at like the 4K level, because that's what they're just naturally going to do that. If you're a playmaker and you go to a hero that doesn't want you to make plays around them, plays will be made around them, because that's just how the enemy team's going to respond. You will bring heroes to the lane that you go to. So he knows his PL does not want heroes in his lane, so he never goes there. Takes a 5 mid. Doesn't actually work out. These type of plays, like they tried to make the play, Phoenix Egg barely died, and there they go. They lost the fight. Like, honestly, something like that, it's a move that conceptually makes sense, but maybe they went a little bit too early because the Bane didn't have 6 yet, and it was like, because the Phoenix Egg died, it just kind of fell apart. The thing is, when you watch pro-level players, they still make mistakes like that. It's really hard to gauge how much can go into a team fight. And this is a spot where I think this play is a little bit excessive. But if you really look at the grand scheme of what his job in this game is right now, it's to make space for PL. If he's just farming neutrals on the Leshrac, then his whole team, or the enemy team, will have the space to go mess with his PL. He's drawing so much attention away from his PL that his PL is now going to have like a 14-minute defusal and almost takes a tier 1 by himself against a lineup that he really shouldn't take a tier 1 against. Look at Ame's game because of the way Leshrac is playing. Goes right back mid, just walks down mid. He gets, he's just putting his hero down this lane, and the opponent team stopped it twice, and eventually he takes this tower, while in the meantime, drawing attention away from his PL. And this is understanding that in this game, there are certain games where Leshrac can just be hitting neutrals. If he had a carry like Weaver, or some other hero that wants to just play up in the opponent's face all game, and is really survivable, then Leshrac could hit neutrals and be very efficient with his farm, but rather he's sacrificing his own game in order to enable the hero that he knows has higher farm priority over him, and if he gives him a defusal, will be incredibly impactful in the game, as opposed to like if he tried to farm and PL was then recovering for the next 10 minutes. So that's understanding his teammates' heroes and the way he's playing this game. Still playing around the Bane, notice that. Once again, not a good play in regards to it. They failed, they died, but really look at the map. This Drow lineup's not going to get anything off of this, and PL is actually the one taking a tower. And they're still up by 4K. So even when they die 2 for 0, that's when it tells you conceptually it's a correct play. Not meaning that they should have done it and died, but that the place they're making this play on the map is correct. Because of the fact that their lane was pushed in top, they're drawing away attention from the PL once again, and it draws 4 players from the enemy team. No network shift happened with 2 heroes dying, and a tower died, so effectively a map control shift went in their favor. And they're purposely playing around mid and top. Why? Obviously the dead lane theory, right? Like, they don't want to play bottom because that's the dead lane. But if you're the Radiant, it's just because it's Roche, and they're denying Roche to a Drow lineup. And they want to control the Roche part of the map against Drow. So they're going to smoke into the enemy jungle, wanting to most likely get wards. They can fight around their PL now. This is where Drow most likely will be. They force a ton of reactions. Yes, it backfires again, but just look at the opponent's perspective on this. Look at what they force the opponent to do. Look at where the opponent is playing. Even when these plays go wrong, even though they're giving up, like they're making mistakes, they're still making the mistakes in the right part of the map. This is way different than making like a smoke into here and just randomly feeding to where all the enemy team's going to be. It's understanding exactly where the plays are supposed to be made. They want to play around mid and top. They want to control Roche. So you know what? They made a smoke into the enemy jungle between mid and top. All these things have a rationale to them. And the reason why I want to make this video and why I was like talking to my chat is that every individual play that they make where they're playing has a reason to it. So they know even though PL has a defusal, they still are not on a clock. They win late game because they have this PL hero. So he's now turned into this efficiency game because with this tower gone and this tower gone, the map has been opened up sufficiently, and he realizes, okay, we've had a few deaths. We can just take a chill pill. So with this lane being pushed out, this farm is still safe. If this lane is pushed into your jungle, or sorry, to your tier 2 tower, or somewhere around here, this is one of the most dangerous places on the map. But because he has a Nyx scouting for him bottom and the lane's pushed out, this is incredibly efficient farm that nobody else wants to take, because PL is the hero that pressures the opponent dead lane. So he's always going to be playing top. He knows that if like a good player knows this, or a good player will know that the PL wants to play around top, because that's the way PL plays. So the Leshrak's never going to go top to take farm, because he'll effectively be taking farm from his PL. So he sees a chance, because this lane's pushed out, he knows his PL wants to push top, that he can get an extra bit of efficiency farm in the jungle between his safe lane and mid towers. He sees the playmakers that he dragged top. He knows Drow's playing alone, because that's how Drow plays. So he knows he's safe to push out one lane in the dead lane, relieves pressure, and then leaves. Does not stay for an extra wave. Scans. He wasn't even going to farm this area until he scanned it. If you saw, he decided to walk this way, and then scanned, saw that he was safe from a smoke, and then walked to this camp. He knew that it was quite possible that the opponent could be smoking into his jungle. The opponent, when missing like this, is either counterplaying them top, or they're going to be making a play aggressively bottom. That's the only two options the enemy has. With the way the mid lane looks right now, it's no way they're making him play mid. And he knows it's equally likely that the opponent's counterplaying their pressure top, or that they're looking to gank and push the tower bottom, based on the lane equilibriums going on right now. So this scan basically says, I don't know where you are, but it allows me, like, it's either top or bottom, meaning I know you're either top or bottom. This means you're top, which signals to his team that they can get out. And then this also means that he can farm this camp safely. Now they reveal themselves after this scan is out, like meaning the scan has been thrown, but now the enemy reveals himself. And he knows the only reason he wasn't going to farm this camp is because he was fearful of them missing. And he knows the reason he left his lane is because it's the dead lane. And this is the dead lane because it's dangerous. So he leaves it, but then he sees them top. And he's like, oh, I know the dead lane is generally the most dangerous lane on the map, but right now is a rare opportunity for me to go push it out. So does he stop to farm the jungle camp? No, he immediately walks back to the most dangerous farm on the map because he sees the opponent team all on the other half of the map. Pressures out this lane. Puts pressure on this tower, forces people to rotate, but doesn't actually try to make a play on this lane because we talk time and time again that that's not what you do. Walks back towards mid. If you see professional games, it is very common for one hero to take the farm in the dead lane as well as mid lane while the rest of the team is making space for them. This is the understanding of trading space making with space taking. He was space maker until the PL defusal, but now the PL has defusal and the entire team of LGD. Do you notice, if you watch the game, that not a single player on LGD played around the PL until he had defusal? Now look at how they're playing. Now they're giving Leshrak the time and space to farm. And if you watch my Terrorblade game, which I'll just put the ID on this video just for the sake of it, I was the Leshrak at this stage in the game. If you watch, I take the mid and bottom farm for a very long time. The ID is right here. I take the mid and bottom farm for a very long time, and this is what he did. You keep pressure out on the bottom lane, forcing one of the enemy heroes to go here, which then frees up your team to push the tier 2 top. That's what he did. And now he pushes out mid, which also means he can potentially join his team if he has to. He doesn't necessarily want to, but if he sees a fight break out that's favorable, he gets a nice rune because of the map control that he's providing. And now he's just going to continue farming as nothing's happening. He's going to keep mid pressured in. He actually gets away because of that blink that's delivered to him. And now he's going to start sitting behind his team top because his PL's taking mid. He basically just traded spaces with his PL real quick. And this is fine when it happens where like he gets ganked, he's forced this way. The PL can be like, I'll take over mid, Leshrak and I can swap. Because both heroes can apply a decent amount of pressure. But look, he's farming the top half, PL's farming the bottom half. This is like a very natural rotation between the two heroes. You see PL's treating the dead lane the same way Leshrak is. He's not actually going into it until he absolutely has to, even threw Doppelganger illusions out to delay it. So we're going to farm up this Bloodstone. We're in absolute chill mode. I feel like there are a few mishaps leading up until this point, but this is a dissection by LGD. They just grind out like a 20k gold lead, and this is how you have to play. They think to themselves, how do they go high ground against Arc Ward and Drow Ranger, right? This, like, Undying, Terrorize. A hero like Necro, who doesn't necessarily, like, flash farm. He just wants to bully you and, like, fight you. And if they just don't fight them, then they can just outfarm them because they have heroes like PL and Lesh, and they have this Nyx hero. Nyx threatens the opponent team, so that naturally slows down the opponent's farm. So they know they can just outfarm them. So they have Leshrak top lane, while they have PL bottom lane, and they just naturally swap when it becomes, like, it's a flow thing. They just make sure one person's doing the top lane, one person's doing the bottom lane. You notice how PL's willing to go bottom because they have vision of heroes in the mid lane, but he's actually going to run into a gank. As you see, he's the one that's going to be getting ganked. He knows he's under the least amount of threat as the Leshrac top. And he doesn't even go for like the tanky items because he knows he has no desire to fight. He goes for the Perseverance as part of his Bloodstone first. Notice how he's checked every single rune. There hasn't been a single rune that's gone by that he hasn't at least checked and seen if it's there. He notices their bottom. Check this out. This is a pretty cool play. So he sees the opponent react to bottom. And instead of walking to top, he knows the urgency because he sees Drow. He sees the enemy team bottom, and instead of walking top, he sees Drow. He knows that Drow is going to potentially go on this wave. The two options Drow has. Go on this wave, and then leave, or just leave. And he knows if Drow stays for this wave, he kills her. If she doesn't stay, he's just going to push the wave. So he knows that, and he has this sense of urgency to TP top. He sits in the trees waiting, and then sees that Drow left because he saw the TP right here. And now he pushes out the lane, immediately applying pressure where the opponent reveals they're not there. This is a type of play where it's no coincidence when he has one hero behind him with the Nyx. By the way, this is something that the Nyx knows. He knows that he enables the Leshrac to play top if he's behind him. He knows that the enemy team TP'd at least 2 heroes to the bottom half of the map, which means he's free to play the top half of the map. So he knows that if he gets ganked, based on what he's seeing right now, it's not going to be 2 heroes and then the entire enemy team TPing in. He knows the entire enemy team cannot be top, so these type of ganks will never work. He's not scared because he has the Nyx Assassin, and he knows the reactions that he forced to go bottom. He forced the Drow to leave, and then he feels safe to farm. A lot of safety of farming is understanding forcing reactions. He lets his Nyx even take the top lane while he jungles because they're just trying to outfarm. You're going to see some sick plays with the Euls too against this Necrobook Arc Warden. But notice how he's back to the routine he was earlier. 2 jungle camps. Notice how every time people farm these 2 jungle camps, their next play is going to be mid. BSJ, how do I know which jungle camps to farm? All it is what lane you intend to go to next. Early on in the game, he farmed these 2 camps and then went back to bottom lane. In the mid game, he's farmed a bit here and then went top. And then in this game, he went here and he goes back to mid. These 2 camps mean mid. These 3 camps mean top. These 2 camps mean bottom. And if you're not intending to go to any lane, sometimes that's when you'll rotate all the way through the jungle to be max efficiency. You can know where a player intends to go next based on where they farm the jungle. The one exception to this was when he was farming jungle here, he saw a Drow show top and he immediately TP'd. That's like the only exception because he had a reason to go top instead. Notice how they get a nice kill on Arc Warden. They basically drew a line saying this is where the enemy team's allowed to farm. They step out of it, kill them. Yule Scepters himself because he knows that's when he's going to die, by the way. He knows that right when he comes out of the stun, Necro could potentially turn around and scythe him. This is like a pretty crazy play if you think about it. He knows Necro's going to have to run away, but he could turn around and scythe him right now, so he Yules himself right away, giving Necro no option. That seems like a random Yules, but he knows the only time in this fight he's going to die is if Necro were to turn around and scythe him with like 2 sources of burst damage. So he Yules himself while the Necro is forced to run away. Buys himself bots because he knows that he's going to be dealing with a lot of split push from the Arc Warden and then has to be able to connect to his team after relieving pressure in the dead lane. Bots are an item you buy where you know you're going to be relieving pressure in the dead lane, but you have to be able to make plays around top. Notice how he uses Yules to dodge the feedback damage from the Necrobook summon. This was one of my small movements that I saw in the game that it's so beautiful because you see what he sees on the map. He sees nothing. So he backs off bottom lane because he knows this is the most dangerous area on the map. He sees nothing. So he backs off. Immediately sees Undying mid, goes back bottom. Because he knows if Undying's mid, there's no way the enemy team's making a play. And that's something where if you understand how heroes work in Dota, you can learn these type of things for yourself. He knows that Undying will be in every single team fight at this stage in the game. Every 4-man gank will include an Undying. Immediately sets up with the Nyx. Really good play. Why Nyx is so good against Willow. Pushes out bottom. Heads towards his PL in the mid lane. Immediately TPs for the same reason we saw earlier. Has his Bane setting up on top. Waits for the Drow. Waits. And then Caesar bottom shows himself. Notice how he waits the entire time for potentially Drow to come top. And then he sees her bottom. He actually didn't see her bottom, but he knows she's not there anymore. But notice how she was no longer there. He waited very patiently for Drow to show herself again. Look at the pressure he's applying on the map. He's forced so many reactions bottom, then goes back top, then kills a tower. This tower's been in the works for the last, 15 minutes? Forces everyone forces everyone on the opponent team top, immediately cuts the wave mid, and then goes bottom. He's saying, they just made a move, killed 2 of my heroes. What can I do to prevent them from taking any objectives? So he cuts a wave mid, clears out bottom, and immediately heads back to Rosh. This is the only reason his team's going to potentially be able to contest Rosh, because of how quickly he did that. He relieved pressure on mid lane and bottom lane, all within 15 seconds of that death of his teammates happening. He says, whenever your teammates lose fights, you think to yourself, what objective is the opponent going to take? If he doesn't respond to bottom, and then they have to respond to Rosh, Drow's going to activate her aura, and this tower is 100% dead. This one might also die. And then Vici can be the one that says, we're going to play the slow game, and we're going to take Rosh and force you to eventually go bottom. But then he says, I cut mid, I cut bottom, I immediately come back to stop the Rosh. And they stop it. No Rosh was achieved, so even though they lost 2 heroes, no objective was gained by Vici. Notice his items. You may say, BSJ, what does he need to fight? I argue he needs a BKB. So when you look at these heroes, you say, you learn how much from these pro players they think they need to fight. If he goes just BKB with no armor items, doesn't he just get right-clicked with like 12 armor against a Drow lineup? So he says, I need Yule's Blink to be able to not just die. I need Bloodstone to be able to farm efficiently and apply pressure. I need bots to actually be able to show up to fights and possibly aid my teammates in kills. I need Shivas in order to not just die while I'm in BKB. And then I will buy BKB. And then we will fight. He knows he needs a BKB to fight, but he knows in BKB he'll just get right-clicked. So they have the lead. He's waiting for all of these items. Pushes out one wave bottom, immediately shows up with his team. Doesn't keep pushing while his team does Rosh. Notice how every time he's gone bottom, it's because he knows he's safe and it's just to relieve pressure. Every single time. Puts himself in the middle of the opponent team because he knows with the haste rune they only have slows. Look at this positioning he has in this fight. He knows the opponent's basically going to get sandwiched, and all they have to do is stop this Rosh from happening. Eventually, the other team backs off. Notice any reoccurring trend here. He knows that the enemy team is going to try to force Rosh by virtue of pressure mid and bottom, so he's constantly relieving pressure in the mid and bottom lanes. Gets another crucial rune. Is he ever going to TP bottom in order to push that lane out? No, because he knows that means he can't contest Rosh. Notice his positioning in fights. He never commits until absolutely has to. Even backs off before the Reaper Scythe. Forces out abilities. Immediately pushes out top very quickly. Arc Warden's TP'd bottom, so he's probably going to shrine up and TP bottom himself. There you go. He's going to Yule's himself to avoid all of the damage. He's going to push out bottom and immediately run back to his team if he thinks they need him, which they don't, so he just farms. Notice how he's now going BKB, saying he can fight. In every game you play, if you're a hero that's efficiently farming, you have to identify when you want to fight. What is the item? And if you say, I need a BKB to fight, then you ask yourself, is a BKB enough? And this is an example of that, right? He's proven with all of his items in the lead they have, they can choose when to fight. They're not on a timer. The opponent is the Drow lineup against a PL. PL outscales Drow. If you don't understand why, you just have to play these type of matchups to understand. So he knows this. So he farms all of these items up before he gets his BKB. Relieves pressure. Immediately TP's back to his team, gets another rune. Have these runes not been game-changing? The haste runes, the arcane runes, the regen runes have allowed him to do his job so well. This is how you execute and just destroy teams when you are winning by 17k. They have been winning by 1,000 every minute for the last 15 minutes. That's all they've been doing, is slowly extending their lead. He's the one that always shows himself on the map, while his Nyx and Bane never do. Notice how many times in my pubs I flame my supports for showing on the map randomly. Notice how many times their supports, if you watch the same game back, have showed on the map. Very rarely. Very rarely. If they show on the map, that basically implies nobody on LGD is trying to make a play. So the only times that heroes like Nyx and Bane are willing to show on the map is when they don't care that the opponent knows they're not making a play. So they get the bounty runes. He immediately TPs out bottom because his team's there. We'll probably push one more wave and then link up with his team. Boom. Pressure in the bottom lane, link up with your team. Everything has to be very fast. Look at the pressure. You force people bottom, you force in mid, top's now your dead lane, and then you can play around this area. And you know they're all here because you forced in the bottom lane. Top lane's their dead lane, so they don't want to play there. So you know they're all in the same area. Forces a great engagement, gets 2 kills, saves his BKB. Almost level 25, but they don't even think they need it. Actually, they get it now. And that allows them to end the game. And this is just a swift execution. Yeah, they're not going to accomplish it on the first try. He's going to have to back off because of how ridiculous high ground defense for Vici is. If this doesn't prove to you how hard it is to end the game and why he farmed up so many items, I don't know what will. They have a 23k advantage, and they still got deterred away from just getting a tier 3. Rinse and repeat. Notice how this was the dead lane now, as we talked about. Notice where their ward vision is, where they want to control on the map. He's going to play away from his team, and he knows this, so he buys bots. The only time he ever has a teammate playing with him is one support, like a Nyx or a Bane that's scouting out for him, maybe setting up kills. He's probably going to run back to base or get himself regen. Yep, he's going to run back to base, or how's he going to get regen? He needs to show up to this fight. He's actually telling his team to wait for him, 100%. His team ends up taking a fight, so he runs back to base after those 2 camps. And then he actually just TPs back top because his team chose not to fight. He sees a fight breaking out, immediately pushes mid again, and then runs to the fight. Blinks himself in with Blink Shiva's BKB. He knows with a hero like PL and Phoenix and Nyx, he's going to be the one that has to go in. And he recognizes to go in this game, he needs Blink Shiva's BKB. Like, he actually needs all of these items in order to go into the fight. Sets up for his team on the Necro. Is actually going to die here, most likely. Does to the Spark Wraith, but he's only dead for 27 seconds. And this is a type of game where every little move that Maybe made is just insanely calculated. Every single one. And these are the type of plays where when players realize how much goes into a professional level decision making, he knows that they're still not going to push high ground. Their next objective is Roche, so he's just going to play around mid and top again. They rotated from mid top to bottom mid, and now they're back to mid top because of Roche timer. That's how it determines where they're going to play on the map. Kill the Shrine, which was enabled by the tier 3 and helps them get Roche. They don't care about bottom Shrine nearly as much. Going to relieve pressure on bottom very briefly so that they can set up for Roche. This is their dead lane now. And then they're going to leave. The Nyx is only there because he knows they're going to stay because they see 3 top, by the way. Nyx is there because he knows Leshrac is not strong enough to push out bottom lane by himself because of the Arc Ward and Hex. So this is an understanding from Nyx that is very high level as well. Notice how all game he's been letting Leshrac push this lane by himself. But now he recognizes that Leshrac is not strong enough to push this lane by himself now that Arc Warden has a Sheepstick. So he sits behind his Leshrac because he knows that's Leshrac's job in the game. So this is something you do as supports and offlaners, as you know that he can't do his job alone anymore. So you help him. Same thing, pushes out bottom, joins the fight mid. Notice how everything that's been happening is him showing up to fights after he pushes out or relieves pressure in lanes. And all the fights end up going favorable for them because they've accrued this massive net worth lead over the course of the game, and suddenly it's just GG. They haven't even ended the game yet, or like taken a rack. I feel like if you watch that game back, even though he has 6 deaths with those 3 like random kind of dives that they made on VG, all of those dives and all the plays of LGD were very calculated. They said, we're going to play around Leshrac for the first 13 to 14 minutes, let PL farm his defusal, then Leshrac's going to have all the time in the world to recover. So if you want to understand how a hero plays aggressively and why, think about it from his perspective this game. If you want to understand how it means to recover, watch his perspective from this game, like what parts of the map he was playing while he was recovering, when he's supposed to farm mid and jungle, when he's supposed to farm top and jungle. You notice how PL was farming top and jungle early because he didn't want his team to play around him. Notice how Leshrac was farming mid and jungle later because he didn't want his team to jungle or farm around, play around him. So this is something where if you understand the right places to pressure on the map, you understand what objectives and what order you're supposed to take them, generally speaking, then you'll know what parts of the map to play based on whether or not you think the team's supposed to play around you with your timings. These heroes, you understand them specifically. So when I look at this Leshrac game, I was just blown away by like even just the little things where he's pushing bottom, and then he knows that he's at threat. He doesn't know where the opponent team is, and then he backs off for 3 seconds, and then he runs right back bottom the minute they show because he knows it's his job to relieve pressure. He was scared because he didn't know where they were. The minute they showed, he went right back bottom. Another play is when he's like debating whether or not to jungle, and he knows that the enemy team is either making him play top or bottom. He scans, knows they're not bottom, sees them top, immediately runs back to the bottom lane. Doesn't jungle, doesn't hesitate. It's this sense of urgency, a specific reason for everything you're doing, and just this high level understanding of Dota that makes every play these players make. You can't underestimate how much goes into every little play. They know who's supposed to play around them. They know when they're supposed to play around people. They know what objectives they need in order to execute the game plan. That Leshrac walked down lanes and died like 3 times in order to take that mid tower. But once they took that mid tower, they knew they needed it. They're like, okay, we're good. We can control Roche now. We can just farm. We're preventing the enemy team from getting any objective to snowball the game. And now we just farm for the rest of the game. And they just accrued a massive lead over the course of 20 to 30 minutes. And the whole game has a plan. And so I made this video. I don't even know where it's going. Maybe it's YouTube. Maybe it's Game Leap. I'm not sure. But this whole concept of why you're doing what you're doing is so important. And if you watch these type of games with a similar mindset to what I had during this game, I talked my ear off because I was basically narrating his thought process while fast forwarding. And obviously, I don't understand everything he's doing, meaning that there's definitely things he's thinking about that I'm not. But in general, I'm able to interpret, like, I feel like the best way to learn is interpreting what these players are thinking in regards to dead lane, where they're farming, who they're playing around, why they're playing around them, who do they kill people with, when do they take certain objectives, when can they fight, when do they need to fight? These type of questions.